The world is holding its breath. The Taiwan Strait, just 130 kilometers wide, has become the most dangerous flashpoint on the planet. Beijing's threats grow louder, its military drills more brazen. The question is no longer if a crisis will erupt, but when. At stake is more than territory, it's a clash of ideologies, authoritarian China versus democratic Taiwan. Taiwan's 24 million people have built a vibrant, open society, standing in stark contrast to Beijing's system. A conflict here would send shockwaves through the global economy and could draw the US and its allies into direct confrontation with China. The international order that has kept the peace since World War II would be put to the ultimate test. The choices made in Washington, Berlin, and beyond will shape the 21st century. The world must decide who will stand with Taiwan, and at what cost. Why does Taiwan matter so much? At first glance, it might seem like just another island in East Asia, but its significance goes far beyond its size or population. It's not just about politics, it's about the backbone of our digital world. Every smartphone, computer, and even the servers powering the internet rely on technology that traces back to Taiwan. Taiwan is home to TSMC, the company that produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. These tiny chips are the brains behind everything from cars to medical equipment, making TSMC a silent giant in our daily lives. If TSMC's production stopped, global tech, automotive, and defense industries would grind to a halt. Factories around the world would face shortages, and innovation would stall overnight. The world's dependence on this single island is a massive vulnerability. It's a single point of failure in a system that billions depend on, making Taiwan's stability crucial for everyone. Taiwan also sits astride vital shipping lanes. Nearly half the world's container fleet passes through the Taiwan Strait each year. These waters are the arteries of global commerce, connecting factories in Asia to consumers everywhere. A conflict here would choke global trade, spike prices, and disrupt supply chains everywhere. Everyday goods could become scarce, and the ripple effects would be felt in every corner of the globe. Defending Taiwan means safeguarding the technological and economic engine of the 21st century. It's about protecting the innovation and prosperity that modern life depends on. That's why its fate is watched so closely in Washington, Brussels, and beyond. Leaders know that what happens in Taiwan could reshape the world order. Taiwan is a linchpin. Remove it, and the global system could collapse. Its connections reach into every economy, every industry, and every home. The stakes are global, touching billions who may not even know where Taiwan is. Yet their jobs, security, and daily lives are all linked to this island's fate. This is not just a regional issue, it's everyone's problem. The world is more interconnected than ever, and Taiwan sits at the heart of that web. The world's future may hinge on what happens here. Taiwan's story is in many ways the story of our shared global future. For decades, America's approach to Taiwan has been a high-wire act called strategic ambiguity. This policy is a careful balancing act, designed to keep both adversaries and allies guessing about America's true intentions. It's a diplomatic dance that has shaped the security landscape of East Asia for over 40 years. The US refuses to say outright if it would defend Taiwan, hoping to deter both a Chinese invasion and a unilateral declaration of independence by Taipei. By keeping its cards close to the chest, Washington aims to prevent either side from making a move that could spark a major conflict. This policy began in 1979, when the US recognized Beijing as the legitimate government of China but passed the Taiwan Relations Act, pledging to help Taiwan defend itself without promising direct intervention. The act was a compromise, ensuring Taiwan's security while maintaining diplomatic ties with China, a rising global power. But times are changing. President Biden has repeatedly suggested the US would defend Taiwan, only for the White House to walk those statements back. These mixed signals have fueled speculation about whether America's policy is shifting in response to China's growing military power and assertiveness in the region. Is America moving towards strategic clarity, a clear promise to defend Taiwan? Such a shift would mark a dramatic change in US policy, with far-reaching consequences for regional stability and global security. Some say clarity is needed to deter Beijing, others warn it could provoke war. The stakes are high and the risks of miscalculation are real. The debate rages, does ambiguity keep the peace, or is it now dangerously outdated? As China's military capabilities grow and tensions rise, the old playbook may no longer be enough to prevent conflict. Supporters say it gives flexibility and avoids being dragged into war by Taipei's choices. Ambiguity allows the US to adapt its response to changing circumstances, keeping both allies and adversaries on their toes. Critics argue only a firm commitment can stop China from miscalculating. They warn that without a clear red line, Beijing might believe it can act with impunity, risking a catastrophic showdown. The US walks a tightrope with the fate of the region, and perhaps the world, hanging in the balance. Every statement, every policy shift is scrutinized by governments and analysts worldwide. The stakes, peace or catastrophic miscalculation. A single misstep could trigger a crisis with global repercussions, affecting millions of lives and the future of international order. The world watches for America's next move. Allies, rivals, and ordinary citizens alike are glued to the headlines, waiting to see how the US will navigate this dangerous crossroads. The future of Taiwan may depend on it. In the coming years, the choices made in Washington, Beijing, and Taipei could shape not just the fate of one island, but the peace and stability of the entire world. If China invades Taiwan, the US president faces a nightmare choice: intervene and risk a catastrophic war with a nuclear-armed superpower, or stand aside and watch a vibrant democracy fall under authoritarian control. The weight of this decision is immense, with consequences that would ripple far beyond Asia. For the people of Taiwan, the stakes are existential. Their freedom, their way of life, and their future hang in the balance. Around the world, democracies watch anxiously, knowing that what happens in Taiwan could set a precedent for decades to come. China's military is now a formidable force, built specifically to keep US forces at bay and to project power across the region. Its rapid modernization has shifted the balance, making any intervention far more dangerous than in the past. War games and military simulations show a US-China conflict over Taiwan would be devastating for both sides, with no guaranteed winner and the potential for escalation into a wider, even nuclear confrontation. US bases in Japan and Guam would be prime targets in the opening hours of any conflict, putting thousands of American lives at risk and threatening the stability of the entire Pacific region. American aircraft carriers, once symbols of unchallenged power, would be vulnerable to advanced missiles and submarines, raising the specter of heavy losses at sea. Losses on both sides could rival those of World War II, with ships, planes, and lives lost in numbers not seen in generations. Beyond the battlefield, the question remains: would Americans support a war over Taiwan, a place many have never visited but whose fate could shape the world? There's little appetite for another costly overseas conflict, especially after decades of war in the Middle East. The human toll, the political divisions, and the strain on military families would be immense. And then there's the economic fallout: shattered supply chains, a global recession, and rising prices hitting every household. The world's economies are deeply intertwined, and a war in Asia would send shockwaves everywhere. The US commitment to Taiwan is real, rooted in decades of partnership and shared values. But honoring that promise comes with risks that are almost unimaginable. The risks are enormous: military, economic, and moral. Every option carries consequences that will be felt for generations. Any decision would weigh defending democracy against the specter of great power war, with the cost measured not just in dollars, but in lives and in the future of freedom itself. The outcome would define a presidency, and history itself. Leaders will be judged by the choices they make in this moment of peril. There are no easy answers, only hard choices, each path fraught with danger, uncertainty, and the possibility of regret. The world holds its breath, waiting to see what America will do, knowing that the decision will echo across continents and generations. The cost of action, or inaction, could be staggering, reshaping lives, economies, and the very fabric of international relations. The stakes could not be higher. The future of the global order, and the values that define it, hang in the balance. Germany, Europe's economic engine, faces its own Taiwan dilemma. For years, Berlin believed trade with China would encourage reform. Instead, China grew more authoritarian and assertive. German industry, especially automakers, relies heavily on the Chinese market, making Berlin cautious about confronting Beijing. But China's actions in Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and around Taiwan have forced a reckoning. Germany now debates how to balance economic interests with democratic values. Military intervention is off the table. Germany's focus is on diplomacy and economic measures. The risk Beijing could retaliate economically if Germany takes a strong stand. Germany's response will be limited, but its choices matter for Europe and beyond. Germany isn't ignoring the Indo-Pacific. In 2020, it released its first Indo-Pacific guidelines, signaling a shift away from a China-centric approach. Germany sent a frigate to the region and joined joint military exercises, symbolic but significant. The message: Germany supports a free and open maritime order, even if its role is mostly diplomatic. In a crisis, Germany's main contribution would be through the EU, pushing for sanctions, condemning aggression, and supporting Taiwan economically. Military support would be indirect at best. Germany's strength lies in its economic and diplomatic influence, not its navy. Its solidarity is cautious, but real. If war erupts, the first blows may be economic, not military. The US, Germany, and allies would unleash sweeping sanctions to cripple China's economy, cutting off banks, freezing assets, and halting tech exports. But China is deeply woven into the global economy. Sanctions would trigger worldwide recession and shortages. The pain would be mutual, and leaders must weigh if their economies can withstand the blowback. America's greatest asset is its network of alliances. Japan, Australia, and others would likely join a coalition to deter or respond to aggression. The AUKUS Pact and joint exercises show a united front. This web of alliances is a powerful deterrent, making clear that an attack on Taiwan means facing a global coalition. The strategy: unity, not unilateral action; the hope: deterrence, not destruction. Amid talk of war and sanctions, diplomacy remains the best hope. The goal isn't to win a war over Taiwan, but to prevent one. This means open communication, crisis management, and reinforcing the status quo. No unilateral changes by force. The US and allies must balance support for Taiwan with careful messaging to avoid provocation. Germany and the EU can use their economic clout to warn Beijing of the costs of aggression. Diplomacy is about building guardrails, agreements, transparency, and dialogue to reduce the risk of miscalculation. It's slow, unglamorous work, but it may be our best chance for peace. In a world on edge, patient diplomacy could make all the difference. The fate of Taiwan and the world order hangs in the balance. A war in the Taiwan Strait would be catastrophic, shattering economies and risking great power conflict. The US faces a perilous choice: defend Taiwan and risk escalation, or hold back and risk emboldening authoritarianism. Germany's role will be economic and diplomatic, not military, but its choices matter. The world's best hope is a mix of deterrence, making the costs of invasion too high, and relentless diplomacy to keep the peace. There are no easy answers, only the challenge to act with strength, unity, and wisdom. The test: preserve peace and protect democracy without stumbling into war. The outcome will define the world for generations to come.